Welcome to the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. This is me, Lean, from arsenalvision.co.uk. Just after a few rambling words of my own, we're going to have the usual great discussion from James, Paul and Elliot. Now that's what I'm talking about. That is what I'm talking about. Great performance from the team today. Superb. Where do we start, really? A nice, sharp, quick performance from our team today. I thought we passed the ball really well. We're really creative and inventive. And it looks like the rest that the players had, a few of the players had, made a big difference to the way we played. You could tell from the very beginning how the game was going to pan out because of the way we passed the ball. Before the game kicked off, it's quite hard to work out what sort of Arsenal team we'd expect because, as you know, we have a lot of injuries at the moment. In my match preview today, I done two graphics of the players we had available for the game today and injured players, and both teams looked quite even. So, bearing that in mind, it was quite difficult to predict how we would play the game today. And yeah, I thought we played really well. Santi in the middle, three strikers again on the pitch, with Giroud in the middle. I thought Giroud was outstanding today. It's amazing that it's the same Giroud who played at Stoke because he wasn't at his best at Stoke at all. In fact, he was quite poor at Stoke, but he was fantastic tonight. Yeah, obviously his two goals were really important and they were both good goals as well, but the way he played and his link play, his touch was very good and very strong, and he just, yeah. So that was really enjoyable. Santi as well, getting on the score sheet again. His first goal, exceptional finish. I say left foot as if it's a problem for him. But that finish over the keeper into the corner of the net was delightful. And very, very impressive performance today. Really enjoyed that. And it looks like the team is starting to click finally. It's taken quite a while for us to get to this point. At the start of the season, we had a lot of problems with, not having much of a pre-season and trying to get the players to play the way that Arsene Wenger wants them to play, and that was becoming a bit of a problem. And it took quite a while for us to get to this point. I mean, it's still only 2 games against Galatasaray and now Newcastle. Although we have played well a few games before that as well. Just looked like we seemed fresher today and sharper, and I enjoyed what I saw today. Very, very impressed. Matthew Debuchy in the middle, alongside Mertesacker, I thought was exceptional. He made a block in the second half, a really crucial block. And I thought, wow, it doesn't look out of place at centre back at all. Yes, it's against Newcastle, although it's a Newcastle side that beat Chelsea and they're on a good run themselves, so don't underplay them too much. But, it's just one game in that position, so we'll see how he does. But if I was Wenger, I'd like him to stay in that position, keep alongside Mertesacker, have some experience in that position, because I think he could do the job. At least he's showing good signs of doing the job anyway, at a very early stage. So all in all, and we have no injuries, which is probably the best news of the night, sort of. So I'm pleased. So I'm going to hand you over to Paul, James and Elliot to talk about the game and enjoy.
Classy Arsenal hold off resilient and determined Lee Mason in 4-1 home victory. My name is Elliot Smith. You can find me at Yankee Gunner on Twitter, and this is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. We're coming to you directly after Arsenal beat Lee Mason 4-1. It was a resounding victory. Newcastle were involved as well. As always, I am joined by gentlemen who will provide much better insight, and I will rant and rave hysterically and probably interrupt them. Let's get to those men now before I get started. It is James. You can find him at GoonerFanatic49. That's GoonerFanatic49. I've probably gotten that wrong again. James, welcome back.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me as always.
Thank you very much for thanking me for having you. And once again, Poznaning in his pants as ever. It is Paul. You can find him on Twitter at Poznanin in my pants. And as always, we remind you that the Poznanin is happening in his pants, not my pants. Paul, welcome back.
Woohoo!
Yes. Well said. That sums it up. That's all for today's podcast. Okay, so while the cheer is still fresh in mind, let's get down to it. Who was the worst player tonight? No, I'm kidding. Great win, great performance, overcame some bad refereeing decisions that I think really on another day, the team could have folded. I thought great performances from guys that had to step in who maybe, you could have forgiven if they didn't put in their best performance. We'll get to the goals in a minute. Let's just start with your man of the match, James. Who you got today?
Well, I'm watching the screen in front of me now, and Olivier, with that very sort of slick haircut of his, is looking rather dashing. And I think he certainly made up, well, not made up, but he was a major improvement upon his performance against Stoke. And he was not only were his 2 goals fantastic and came at rather pivotal moments in the game, but his hold-up play was excellent. And I thought much of the play actually went through him through the centre. So it was a delight to see him in the mood that he was tonight. He was superb. And I mean, a little shout out for Santi as well, who's had a tough, well, so-called patch over the last throughout most of the season so far. So it was nice to see him not only get 2 goals, but 2 goals in the fashion that he did. That sort of touch for his first, and then beautiful little finish into the right corner was excellent. And then of course at 3-1 and late in the game, but the panache and the confidence to do the Santi Panenka was excellent to see.
I agree. It pains me to say it, but since Wilshere has gone out, I think a lot of the players in midfield have started to round into form, and you have to wonder if those 2 things are related. But all in all, great performance from Giroud, and it's days like today that make you wish he could play like this every day. I think some of it has to be down to the play of the front 3 in general. I thought they looked great. Paul, who's your man of the match? And maybe if you want to expand on just that front 3 of Giroud, Welbeck, and Sanchez, and how they interchanged, and maybe if that's the future of the front 3, even when players start to come back.
So man of the match would have been Santi, but that's too easy. Mm-hmm. And just a little note on Santi, I do actually love him in center midfield. I think he creates so much from deep, and he's so deadly coming through the middle. And the way he can flick it onto either foot and spray the balls across the field, beyond his 2 great goals today. But my actual man of the match, because Santi's too easy, is Debuchy. I thought I'd pictured him before the game, just not footballistically, but just in terms of the presence of the guy and the size and the physicality and his winning headers, and the fact that he's only moving one place to the left, that he would actually do a pretty damn good job. And I was really pleased with what he gave us now. Maybe Newcastle didn't press him that hard, but he looked very much the part for his first game. So I was really heartened by him, looking past Santi as man of the match. The front 3. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to ask, do you think the secret here is, or the key, what we've been missing is that we need more players with crap haircuts? I mean, is that the problem? Not enough crap haircuts in the squad?
I thought we had crap haircuts all over the field today. Jesus.
Well, it never helped Marouane Chamakh, so maybe I'm off there. But sorry, go ahead with your analysis of our brilliant trio up front.
Indeed, you can overdo anything, including that thing that died on Marouane Chamakh's head that he's then stapled on for the rest of his career. I thought the front 3 were really good. The thing is, I love Theo, but if I put that bias aside, this is if I'm an opposing team, this is the front 3 I really don't want to see, because they're going to give you problems when you're going forward or going back. Giroud isn't the fastest, but he's always worked really hard up front. I mean, we've seen a couple of goals he grafted out of hassling a goalkeeper or a defender. And of course, Sanchez and Welbeck, phenomenal work rates. If Welbeck is covering one of the wings for a period of the game, the opposition is not getting down that wing. Him and Gibbs or him and Bellerin, nobody's getting past those boys. So I love Welbeck in terms of his overall effort. The one moment that I was irritated our front 3 was on their goal, when Sanchez was walking away from the ball like he hadn't a care in the world. And they put that. Now, I don't know that it was necessarily his responsibility to get ball side of their defender, but that was an absolute blip from him and indeed from our defense to take their eye off the ball, quite literally. But overall, yeah, I love that front 3.
I think the thing that surprises me is, that Danny is quick. He definitely has pace, but it's amazing to me how many balls that he looks second best to get to, he just glides by a defender and gets there first. I mean, that's what created the penalty that Cazorla converted. And his hold-up play is a lot better than he gets credit for. He uses his body well. He holds it up well. We always praise Giroud for that, but I think you could argue that Welbeck may have an edge on Giroud in hold-up play.
I think Welbeck does everything Giroud can do, but not quite as well, and he does a few other things Giroud can't do. And the rotation between the three of them today, I thought was really good.
And it was interesting. I mean, Welbeck dropped deep at times, came into sort of a support striker or number 10 role. Great fluidity. Just love the play. I mean, we could go on and on about everyone. Let's get to the goals a little bit, James, and obviously you can touch on the front three. I mean, Welbeck should have scored a stunner. Giroud had a couple great ones. Cazorla had a finish that, where has that been? Great to see Alexis getting assists, really playing team football. What was your pick of the bunch? What goal did you like the most? Was your favorite goal the disallowed goal? Because for me, that was arguably the best of the bunch.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that Welbeck goal was fantastic, and I still can't for the life of me understand why that was given as a foul. It was a nothing, not even challenge.
I mean, come on, we should be thankful it wasn't given as a penalty for Newcastle. Such is the standard of refereeing right now.
Absolutely. I mean, on the topic of the refereeing, that Tiote challenge should probably, in my eyes, should have been somewhat sort of considered as a red card. But needless to say, I guess on that topic the thing is, we can lament the referee as much as we want, but when you play as well as we did today, it becomes a non-issue, and that's all you can really ask for from the side. But with regards to, I'm watching the Santi goal now as we speak, actually, and that first touch, it's great. He just clips it over Colaccini's legs, keeps his balance, and then it's a delightful little dink to the back post. It's absolutely fantastic. It's of the goals that were actually allowed, it was certainly between that and that Giroud flick, which wasn't too dissimilar to the goal he scored last season against Spurs at home. That kind of, with his left foot from the front post, curling it around. And again, it was great to see him in that kind of form. So that's almost a slight frustration with Giroud, really, isn't it? I mean, you look at the Stoke game and he had that, chance on a plate at 1-0 down. And then, I just saw his Giroud goal again. Yeah, I mean, both of those goals are fantastic. But when Giroud is playing like that, he's a delight to watch, and the entire team was. Going back to the front three, I guess sort of a question that I asked myself was, before when I saw the lineup for the Stoke game, I was a little surprised to not see those three, because clearly, I mean, you could see from today they work so dynamically well together. But aside from that, defensively, obviously we talk a lot about the industry of Sanchez and Welbeck, and even to a certain degree Giroud, but also the aerial prowess of Olivier and Danny in particular, defensively are extremely key, especially because that Colback character was he had a fairly deadly set piece on him. But when you have the likes of Welbeck and Giroud with that physical presence, it certainly helps out a side that it has been known for suffering from sort of defending and certainly attacking set pieces. So especially against the likes of Crouch, etc. at Stoke, I'm still a little baffled as to why that front three wasn't selected. But I guess we shouldn't sort of linger too long on that. It was great to see the turnaround today and a fantastic home victory.
Absolutely, Paul. Favorite goal?
It's really tough. Those were 4 really good goals. Would have to be one of the. I liked the Santi goal, which involves Gibbs and Sanchez. I really love that ball from Sanchez into Cazorla as he's cutting to the left.
Yes.
In that, there was nowhere really to pass apart from that one place. And perfect pace, perfect weight. It wasn't obvious, but it was killer because it gave Santi. It allowed Santi to stay in stride, keep momentum, keep control. I thought that was beautiful. So that particular Santi goal.
Okay, yeah, I have to agree. I love that one. I mean, maybe my favorite was the disallowed Danny Welbeck goal, and it's a shame because he really deserved it for the quality. But I want to single out a player for praise, but I want to find a way to do it while keeping some sense of cynical, pessimistic negativity in the question. So I'm going to do my best. We'll stay with you for a minute, Paul. I thought Hector Bellerin was sensational today.
Yeah.
I thought he was sensational in attack, and I thought he did enough remember, there's still a very young player thrown into the highest level of football, and I thought he did well. A player who probably wasn't going to be in the plans this season. So let me ask you this. Here's the positivity. We're going to praise Bellerin, and the negative angle is going to be about Chambers. I thought Mertesacker looked really reassured today. I thought he looked back to his best self. He didn't have the lack of confidence that we've seen from him when he's played without Koscielny. I thought Debuchy was a big part of that. But is there an argument? First of all, I want to hear your thoughts on Bellerin. But is there an argument that Chambers, as much as we love him and see talent in him, has been a bit of the liability, getting yellow cards early in matches, maybe diving in a little too much, positionally a problem? I mean, is there an argument? Maybe Jack Wilshere has been a little bit of addition by subtraction. Was this addition by subtraction with Chambers out today? Or do you think it was just that we played well and Bellerin was excellent? What's your feelings on that?
Well, I think you got to subtract the fact that it was kind of a little bit like the Galatasaray game where you felt they were half a yard off us for whatever reasons because we were so good and they were just a little off, that made us look good all over the park. Now you put Debuchy and Bellerin, well, you had Bellerin in against Stoke, and maybe Bellerin's still going to be under a heck of a lot more pressure.
Could you argue, though, that Chambers had a I mean, not that we're trying to go back to Stoke, but had a worse game than Bellerin at Stoke and was sort of fortunate not to be the one? Well, I guess you couldn't take him off, but sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I emotionally, I agree with your point. There's this feeling that Chambers needs to continue to prove himself and that he started really strong and he's dipped recently. And certainly, to me, Debuchy, there is an advantage to being whatever Debuchy is, 28, 29, and Chambers is only 19, getting moved all around the place. So I think your point's right. I think it's a harsh point, but probably a correct point. And, I love Hector Bellerin going forward, going back everywhere. He's got loads to learn. But even when he screws up defensively, he's so fast, he'll run around the guy twice and get the ball off him.
That's the key. You got to love a pacey fullback, right?
It's delicious. And he uses pace so well going forward. The only issue with Bellerin is he's a horrible player to have in the box when there's a cross coming into his side. I mean, he's a foot and a half too short, so.
Well, and his positioning for their goal was terrible. I mean, the way we set up to defend that free kick. But, I mean, look, he's got loads to learn. But, I mean, when I look at Bellerin, I see a more natural fullback than I see with Chambers. But because Chambers has basically never played center back in his career, he's a very raw center back. So I think for me, the question becomes, do you want Bellerin at fullback because he's more natural for that position? And do you not want Chambers at center back because he just doesn't seem ready yet? But a great day for Bellerin. I think for a young player who got hauled off at halftime after, at the Stoke game, to see him come back and play like he did today was really reassuring. And he deserves huge credit.
Can I just add the short sentence that I see Bellerin very much in the Dani Alves mode as a right back in terms of what he brings to a team. I mean, there'll still be, Alves, who I hate, is still a special, very special player. But that's why you have a Bellerin on the field. He's going to create that much trouble going forward, and he's going to improvise brilliantly going backwards. But you're going to hope he's not defending crosses all game.
And like Dani Alves, he'll finish his career as a Barcelona legend, so that's good. Hey, let's turn it over to you, James. The back four, I thought creditable work today. I mean, but the midfield, I think, has been where we live and die this season. We've seen some abysmal midfield performances like we did at Stoke, and we've seen some good ones, not enough, but I thought today was a particularly brilliant midfield performance. And we talk about addition by subtraction. Obviously, losing Aaron Ramsey is crushing. You and I have talked a lot on the pod and off the pod about Aaron Ramsey, and I felt we've needed more from him. Hard to get more than we got in midweek, but you've seen incremental improvement. Watching Oxlade-Chamberlain and Santi Cazorla play midfield today with Flamini, did you get the sense that maybe it isn't the work? Again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying the Ramsey injury is a good thing, because it's not, but they tend to both have that little extra tricky dribble to them to create space, to get by men that maybe Ramsey doesn't necessarily do. I think They don't force the issue as much necessarily. What did you think of the midfield today? And is this a midfield that potentially, at least until an Ozil is back, and obviously Arteta would replace Flamini, is this a midfield you'd be interested in seeing more often this season?
I'm going to touch on the defense quickly.
Or do that. Or disregard my question entirely and just talk about the defense.
Well, I'm going to touch on the defense because I think the two play into each other extremely sort of strongly. I think the defense today, first of all, just quickly on Debuchy, I was a little concerned to see him play at centre-back purely because I don't think he's ever played there before. But we touched on it in the pod, or if we didn't, we certainly should have done, after Galatasaray's. It's so great to have him back because his aerial presence is phenomenal, especially for someone who is a fullback. So in theory, he's a player that can fit into that centre-back role fairly well, and it turned out he actually was able to fill it pretty excellently today. On the topic of Bellerin, I think he's a fullback that suits the way in which Wenger wants us to play pretty excellently. He's so quick; he can get in behind the lines wide on the flanks. He when he's confident, certainly he's great with the ball at his feet. He can take on a man. There was a point in the first half, I think towards the end, where he beat a couple of players and nearly sort of rounded their right back and nearly put himself through on goal, but instead won a corner. But yes, I think there's, especially at his young age, there's the difference between him and Chambers is that Chambers is a little bit more solid all round defensively. I think positionally he's a little more experienced in the sense that he's played a lot more games at the highest level, and obviously Chambers has that sort of physical presence where he's not as prone to the deep balls that come in and is able to challenge against most wingers. But still, he's, especially in a game like this at home, he's a fantastic fullback to have. Now, on that topic, leading into the midfield, I think, yes, it was exciting to see Alex in the middle. I know that Wenger's talked a lot about him ultimately playing a more central role, and especially going forward, he was excellent. But there were actually times in the first half where he gave the ball away a little cheaply. There was that time where we had the break on. I think it was Giroud that was pretty much clean through.
The ball wouldn't sit down for him, and he tried to get it over the defender to Giroud.
Right, and he did miss kick it. And listen, it was one moment of the match. Don't take me wrong. But here's the thing. I fear that had he been in the central midfield against Stoke instead of Ramsey, we'd be probably complaining about his performance, because if you don't have that solidity at the back, it's very difficult for the midfield to flourish. And I think that's where the biggest issue was. I know you talked about Ramsey's performance and most of the midfield against Stoke being poor, but I really think the issue was at the back, and that's what created much of the disconnect between the two. So I and I am obviously an ardent believer in Ramsey's performance abilities, and even his more recent games prior to Galatasaray as a player that was slowly on the up. I think he would have been a player that too would have flourished today. They're both excellent players, and I think it is partly a testament. We're on a tightrope now. I don't think we can afford one more injury in the midfield. Otherwise, we're looking towards bringing in Coquelin. But given the wealth of injuries in that position or within the midfield, it's still, I don't know if impressive is necessarily the word, because at the same time we're a team that somehow manages to incur such a number of injuries so consistently, but to still be able to put out the likes of the Ox and Santi with Flamini behind them, given the insurmountable injuries, was good to see. And I think it's great to be having a debate. Is Alex preferable in the middle to Aaron? It's obviously a good headache for the manager to have when they're both fit.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a good problem to have when you have choices that you trust. And I think Ramsey gives you more goals and maybe more defensive solidity and that work rate. I think Chamberlain gives you more pace, more dribbling, maybe slightly better interplay in midfield. And the one thing I will say we miss when we play a Flamini, Ramsey, Cazorla midfield is it's a very slow midfield, not a lot of pace. I like the dynamic of having two players in midfield who can beat their man off the dribble, like Oxlade-Chamberlain and Cazorla can. But it's a good, like you said, good problem to have. good question. I mean, I think it's also interesting because when Theo is back, like Paul, I'm a huge Theo Walcott fan. I think it'd be interesting to drop Sanchez back into the number 10 in place of either a Cazorla or an Oxlade-Chamberlain, and play Theo, Welbeck, and Giroud and really go for it. But, those, again, good problems to have, and hopefully we'll start to see more players coming back before the raft of 7 or 8 new injuries pop up. So, I mean, all in all, a fantastic performance. Paul, before we move off this today, just real quick, I mean, your thoughts on how the midfield looked with Cazorla and Oxlade-Chamberlain, and just really briefly, is this a midfield that you would continue with or like to see more often, or do you go right back to Ramsey when he's back, or whoever the other option might be?
I do really love Santi in midfield. I think his decision making is getting better. I think he's tenacious and a terrier, and the more time he's played in that position, the better he'll get defensively. I haven't seen a lot from Oxlade-Chamberlain defensively that makes me feel against the bigger teams he can handle it. So I love the 3 today. I think Flamini's done very well to settle into to simplify his role and to do a good job. Overall I'm always going to go for Arteta. So I think we're going to see lots of combinations. Look, according to Wenger, Ramsey's out for a few weeks, so we're going to see this midfield or something like it against Liverpool.
Yep.
So we'll get to see a bit more. I do like it. I think I haven't seen Chamberlain making a lot of tackles in his career in that midfield position, but I mean, he just looks brilliant with the ball at his feet or making passes. I mean, I do see why people think he'll be better in midfield, even though I think he's delicious on the wing too. So yeah, I want to see a lot more of this. It's not quite ready for showtime against the biggest teams, this 3, but maybe they'll get that cohesion defensively that Newcastle and Galatasaray didn't really put them to the sword over. So looking forward to seeing it evolve.
Yeah, well, and it looks like we're going to have to see Debuchy continue to step up at center back as Koscielny's been ruled out for a few weeks. I mean, I think it'll be very, very interesting to see if he picks Debuchy there or Chambers. My hope is that he'll stick with Debuchy, but I don't want to get onto that because we'll just go back to my usual whining and moaning about Koscielny's injury, and we should have more center backs, and we've covered that at length.
But sorry, just to clarify, would you prefer Bellerin with Debuchy, or would you prefer Chambers a right back with Debuchy in the center, or would you?
I think it depends, right? In games where we are at home and we expect the team to defend deep, and we're probably going to need to prize open a compact defense, I'd probably go for Bellerin with Debuchy central, but in games where we expect to be under the cosh a little more or face more of a physical challenge, I'd probably Chambers has recently stepped it up when he's come back into right back. I would definitely go for Debuchy at center back. I just think experience trumps talent, and arguably Debuchy has all the talent that Chambers has, but experience trumps all at that position. I want to touch on something quickly, because this isn't what this podcast is really about. It's a post-match podcast, but I think this happened as part of the match, so I want to address it. But if possible, guys, I don't want to get into a huge existential debate. So towards the end of the match, we heard One Arsene Wenger sung from the supporters, two choruses of it. I wouldn't say that I was surprised, but maybe a little bit surprised, especially after what had happened. Paul, do you think some of that obviously is just the good feeling of a great performance, but also in response to how people felt watching the video from the train platform at Stoke? Is it more a rebuttal to the extremely vocal supporters who have been agitating for Wenger to go? Because I guess what I'm asking is, do you think there's still fervent support for the manager like that would have suggested, or do you think to some extent this is a backlash towards the way the people who would like to see the manager go have been expressing themselves?
Yeah, I think it's all of that. That's the problem. You're looking at maybe a majority of people at the stadium singing a song together, and they've all got a different mix of the different things you're talking about. But the one thing that would unite them is they don't like what they've seen in the last couple of weeks. They don't like this nastiness between both sides. They don't like whatever about the banner then becomes a thing, and the guy who holds the banner becomes a whole thing, and now you're kind of this media thing, and then the media jump, nothing ever stays. That's the problem with these things. Nothing ever stays with, if you want to call it, its initial pure intent. Not that I necessarily think it was that pure, but anyway, even Fair assuming enough. That the person who held up the banner had a pure motive, it never stays that way. And that's the problem with this stuff. And I think Arsenal supporters are sick of this. Not necessarily all of them are angry with the banner or the person. They're angry with this shit that comes when we all start going at each other and the media hop on it, and just the negativity. In the old days, you were negative with 3 or 4 people in the pub after a game. Now you get to be negative with several million people all at the same time feeding off each other. And it's just it becomes a downward spiral for everybody.
Well, I'll add to that. I think to that point, nothing will make people stand up and scream louder than someone speaking on their behalf, someone putting words in their mouth or speaking for them without their consent. And I think the problem with the dissent towards the manager and the train platform and the banner is it may be a very real opinion of a reasonable swath of fans or a reasonable group of people, but it has been picked up by the media as the feeling of Arsenal supporters generally. And whether some Arsenal supporters are more on the fence or slightly more in favor of the manager or fervently in favor of the manager or maybe even slightly ready for change but wouldn't like to see it expressed that way, I think this is sort of a rebuttal, not just to the fans who want him to go, but maybe to the media to say, hey, you know what, we're not all screaming, frothing at the mouth, angry mobs on train platforms and wanting to take back control of the narrative. And if you had narrative as your secret word for the podcast, you can now take a drink. So, yeah, over to you, James, really quickly, because like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but do you think this is representative of the level of support of the manager and that it's much, much greater than maybe we had even anticipated? Or do you think it is a mix of support of the manager, but also a repudiation of the way the manager's been criticized by a certain group of fans?
Yeah, I think you put it extremely succinctly and articulated the point very well. It's definitely a bit of both. We talk every time about the short-termism of football, so when the going gets tough, people find something to complain about, and when things, especially after a game like today, which wasn't only a great victory, but it was also probably arguably our best performance of the season, at least in the Premier League. It's easy to get behind the team and get behind the manager. And I do think, given everything that's gone on over the last week or so, there's been a bit of a backlash from the fans in that as much debate as there is with regards to whether Wenger should stay or whether Wenger should leave, I don't think any group of fans or the fan base as an entity wants to be sort of classified as being in one particular side of the fence, and certainly not necessarily being on the sort of Wenger out brigade, but more importantly, be sort of branded alongside the way in which that message has been portrayed by some of the Arsenal fans, or a couple of Arsenal fans in particular. I think it in some ways it's almost a bit of a shame that it came out so publicly, the video recording at the train station, because I at the time it really riled me up. You guys both know how big a supporter I am of Arsenal, and certainly of the squad at the moment, and the confidence I have in it, but more so just kind of the disrespect shown towards him. But at the same time, with a little bit of time away from it, I imagine that in the longevity of Wenger's career, I'm sure there's actually been several occasions of this kind of thing taking place, but it just hasn't really reached the kind of public audience that it managed to on this occasion. And obviously with the kind of level of outcry that there is at the moment, it's kind of been exaggerated. But ultimately I think it was a slight backlash, and when it really comes down to it, I don't think Tim Stillman put it extremely well on his recent Thursday blog with on the Arsblog site, is that we, as fans, we almost have we can speak louder than ever, but our words have never sort of meant less. And in some ways, I suppose, especially given the kind of way in which sort of things go in swings and roundabouts, it's probably to a certain degree in the grand scheme of things the way it should be. Let the club act in the way that they feel they should, and hopefully it will align with the supporters' needs and wants and desires.
Yeah, I think that's good. Let's leave it there. Like I said, I mean, we could talk manager and people's opinions on the manager all day, and I do that the minute the podcast ends. That's literally all I do the entire day. But I want to start to wrap up, and I know Paul has some important stuff going on IRL. Parents, ask your kids. So let's wrap up with a look ahead to Anfield. Little difficult to know what to expect to be greeted by at Anfield because obviously United Liverpool play tomorrow. I kind of half hope that Liverpool just get pounded, although a draw is probably the best result. But Liverpool coming off being knocked out of the Champions League, really a poor showing from them in Europe. Rodgers seems to be on the brink. I don't think they'll have Sturridge. They're really, I think they're on the brink of collapse, and it would be great if we could be the ones to sort of push them over the edge with a loss at home. You could have been talking about two really out of form, struggling teams in the league, but I think Stoke result aside, there's been a lot to be positive about. James, we'll stay with you just for a minute. Really quickly, team selection, you expect to see pretty much the same at Anfield, and we've got a lot of revenge to get for last year. You think we'll get it?
Yeah, I imagine the only real change that could take place is Chambers perhaps coming in. That's especially away from home. Mm-hmm. Maybe either one of Debuchy or Chambers at right back and the other at centre back.
Well, it's a question of who you want Sterling running at, right?
Well, yes, that's very true. I mean, obviously, look, this is where the manager makes his bucks, but
I mean, the way Montero ripped Chambers apart, you could argue that Bellerin might be better for Sterling. But
listen, my prediction would be that Debuchy will play right back and Chambers will play centre back alongside Mertesacker. And the thing is, as good a game as Bellerin had today, at home especially, I think it's a game that suits him. When you go away to Anfield or a little bit more under the cosh, I fear that I mean, I haven't seen enough of him, but I wonder how strong he truly is defensively. As quick as he may be and as good a recovery as he may have, I think we've seen in a couple of moments at Stoke, and Chambers was certainly had a poor game as well, and even for the goal we conceded today, that he's not, he's not the all-round defensive, certainly at this stage, right back that you necessarily want to be having in the side. I still think he may be a slight liability at right back, but then there's arguments to be made in the same case for Chambers. But either way, look, I think it's a great time to be playing Liverpool. I can't see them getting a result against United. They must be a relatively demoralised squad, having had a pretty dreadful start to the Premier League season. They've been knocked out of the Champions League without Sturridge and with Suarez having left, and very few of their summer signings seem to be hitting it off. And I think it'll be a perfect opportunity for us to go to an away game against again, much in the same way of the Dortmund at home, get a sort of a team that has a bigger brand than the actual sort of quality of football that they're producing at the moment. Which I think, especially after the 2-4-1 victories, I think we'll get the 3 points, and I think it could be a rather Riley victory. But me saying that probably isn't a good thing in itself.
There's that game fucked. Okay. No, look, we put the performance together against United, but not the result. Hopefully we can, put both together at Anfield. And they say that bad refereeing decisions even out over the course of a season, which is obviously bollocks. But, if they're going to even out, today's bad decisions didn't hurt us. Maybe we can get the calls to go our way next week. Paul, we'll finish up with you. It's Anfield, 8 days. Hopefully they're down and demoralized. And, I don't think, like I said, that they'll have Sturridge. I'm not sure if they'll try Balotelli against us for his physical presence. Just really quickly, you expect to see sort of the same minus maybe Chambers for Bellerin. And what are you expecting ahead of that match?
Yeah, I agree with James. I think Debuchy at right back, and we'll put Chambers almost because of seniority, and I'm okay with that. I think Debuchy and Chambers will get the start, and Chambers will play centre back. Interesting comment.
You think Chambers will play center back, and Debuchy will not play center back? Is that what you'd opt for, or is that what you just expect?
What would I opt for? If I were the manager, that would probably be what I would do. As a fan, because I like a little excitement, I'd be tempted to get Bellerin in there. He's a lot of fun. But
you think the manager will move Debuchy out of center back despite the more reassured performance we saw today?
Yeah.
Okay.
He backs his players, and he's going to back Chambers right now. And Debuchy will do a very good job at right back and help us on the wing against Sterling. So Sterling will have to beat us through the middle, which I guess he's well capable of.
We'll have a little wager because I'd be shocked if he moves Chambers back into center back, especially Pear looked a lot more reassured today with Debuchy next to him, but we'll find that out. Overall, you feel pretty optimistic about that, or is this another case of until we prove it in a big game, you're going to hold your enthusiasm?
The latter. I'm not pessimistic, but we're really good against weak teams and middling teams, and I don't like to be negative about it, and I don't really feel negative about it. I think we're going to get strong against the bigger teams, but until it happens, I'm not going to waste too much breath on it. I'm open to the possibility we play a stormer at Liverpool, and I'm good with that. I did want to add in the Pardew comment, which was, it kind of reflected what we said today. He says, they deserved it today. Cazorla and the front three are difficult to handle. That's kind of back to our point of the front three. This is a front three you don't want to play against. He says, I thought Chamberlain was outstanding. So he actually says the front five gave him headaches all over the place. And I think our energy and work rate of those front five is really, really intimidating. So, and that takes a lot of pressure off the back four. Sorry.
We have what Liverpool don't right now, which is a dynamic group of attackers who can create problems and score goals. And it's a little bit of a reverse of last season. You forget before last season, our record at Anfield recently and against Liverpool recently has been excellent. And we did comfortably beat Liverpool at home last season. So I'm hoping things will sort of revert to normal. It's a rare Sunday for us. We get to glow all day Saturday, then sit back and enjoy watching Spurs, Liverpool, and United possibly all drop points. I think we better leave it there. First and foremost, we want to thank the two intelligent men who joined us. So first of all, if you want to follow James on Twitter, you can follow him at GoonerFanatic49. GoonerFanatic49, or really just any Twitter handle. Type anything in and follow that person. James, great to talk to you as always.
A delight as ever, guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, you too. And if you want to read some great blogs and some shit tweets, you can follow Paul at Poznan in my pants. I'm kidding, of course. They're great tweets as well. Paul, thanks for coming on.
One Arsene Wenger.
All right, enough of you. We're going to leave it there. Hey, it's 8 days for hamstrings to go pop and quads to tear. Should be a lot of fun. We'll look forward to talking to you after the glorious win at Anfield. Until then, cheers.